the April 7th, 2025 meeting of the Albemarle County Architectural Review Board to order. We could call the roll, please.
Mr. Stoner?
Here.
Mr. Hancock?
Here.
Mr. Matsuno?
Here.
Mr. Henningsen?
Here.
And Mr. Vanderwerf?
Here. All right. Thank you. Today's meeting is a hybrid meeting. The public may access and participate in the meeting electronically. Instructions for doing so are posted on the Albemarle County website at the Albemarle County calendar. The public has real-time audio-visual access to this meeting over Zoom and real-time audio access over telephone, both as provided in the lawfully posted meeting notice. This meeting is being recorded and will be made available on the county's website. This meeting is a public record and subject to disclosure under the Freedom of Information Act. All speakers, when it is your turn to speak, please state your name for the record. Applicants who are making presentations, note that your presentation is limited to a total of 15 minutes, which you can divide among your team members. Staff will let us know when the 15 minutes are up. If applicants in the meeting room have team members attending virtually who will need to present, please make that known when you come to the podium. Everyone who is participating virtually, please mute your microphone until it is your turn to speak. We'll move on to disclosures. Do any ARB members have anything to disclose?
I will have to recuse myself from the Flow Mercedes
All right.
application.
No. And no for me. Are there any members of the public that want to make a comment about a project that is not on the agenda for review?
Not at this time.
All right, great. We don't have any consent agenda items today. We have one regular review item, ARB 2024-25, Flow Mercedes. There you go.
Great. Okay, this is a proposal to replace the existing automobile showroom at 1313 Richmond Road with a new showroom for Flow Mercedes-Benz. You probably recall that you completed a preliminary review of this proposal in January of this year. In that review, a few design issues were identified to be addressed in a future application. One of those issues was about the colors and finishes. The renderings showed the eastern end of the building as a very dark mass, and at the west end, there were metal panels proposed above a black painted base. There were questions about how the dark color would look and how the painted base would coordinate with the other materials. The renderings have been revised to show the metal in a lighter tone, and that helps clarify how that mass is stepped back. And the painted base has been changed to a brick base. The brick is expected to have an appropriate appearance, and it's a tie to the local context. To be clear, the color of the metal has not changed, but also black metal is used elsewhere on the corridor, and there it has been shown to have an appropriate appearance. Another issue identified in January was the color of the paint for the side of the service building. That color has been changed from gloss white to a Sherwin-Williams color that is a little bit darker. However, that wall is still expected to stand out, so we're still recommending a darker color to downplay the blank wall. Since the preliminary review, the landscape plan has been updated. It shows the existing landscaping, a few shrubs to be relocated, and a few shrubs to be added. What exists does not meet the guidelines for frontage trees, and it isn't consistent with the last approved plan. The primary issue is that it's missing large shade trees along the entrance corridor frontage. Most of what exists there are ornamental trees. The ornamentals occupy most of the available planting area, but there looks like to be a few opportunities, a few spaces where large trees could be added. In this review, we also noted a few minor issues. They include the need to label the parking spaces in front of the showroom and adjusting the limits of disturbance to accommodate moving some of those shrubs. Our recommendation is for approval with the conditions that are listed in the staff report, and I'd be happy to try to answer any questions you have.
All right, thanks a lot for the presentation. I guess we'll start with Dade if you have any questions.
Sure. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Margaret, for the report. I just want to double check that I heard you correctly, that the last approved site plan includes large shade trees that are not present. Is that
Yes.
correct? Okay. Thank you.
All right, Tara,
I don't have any questions. Thank you, Margaret.
Frank Stoner.
Recused.
Oh, that's, yeah. Frank,
I don't have any questions. Thanks.
and I don't have any questions either. So if the applicant has a presentation, please step forward.
Good afternoon. My name is Kevin Schaefer with Design Develop Architects here in Charlottesville, Virginia. Thank you to county staff for the staff reports and the comments. And thank you to the board for the preliminary review this past January. I think as we typically find in this process, the building gets better with the comments and review that we get from county, and we feel that's the same way here. I'll start just by addressing the site comments. I have some notes here from Justin Shimp, our civil engineer. Regarding the shade trees along the frontage, we did go back and look at the site plan that Margaret was referencing. It looks like those were elms that had either died or had been removed and had not been replaced. So we would, we'll go back with those same shade trees in the locations that were prescribed by the previously approved site plan. That's not a problem. It was kind of a moment where we were like, I wonder why there aren't shade trees here, but I think it explains it with the elms. The spaces in front of the building that were unidentified in the most recent submission, we went back to the prior special use permit and looked at those. Those will be labeled as display. So they would not be, they will not be displayed. They will be labeled as customer spaces based on the requirements of the previously approved special use permit. And the final site related comment talked about the limits of disturbance around the new shrubs, which will revise that as well in the next submission. No problem there. The two primary revisions since the previous submittal back in January is largely the brick base. We are suggesting a brick. I have a sample here. Unfortunately, the white sample was sent instead of the black, but we do have a few brochures that show the black texture. This shows kind of the texture of the material that we're proposing. This is also like a 50-pound sample, so I'm gonna put that back down. The brick is long and thin and linear and kind of speaks to the contemporary building form, but is also still very contextual in terms of providing that masonry base. It solves a lot of design problems for us as well. How that material meets the ground was always a challenge when we were looking at metal panel extending below there. A painted parge brick, a painted parge base didn't feel appropriate. So we are excited to have Mercedes-Benz approval on this material, and we're hopeful that the board feels the same way. We think it would be a nice material that sort of complements the ACM while allows us to make that transition much easier. We went through some additional revisions and just sort of development on the exterior lighting, as we mentioned in the packet. And then we had changed the service building side and rear paint to a slightly darker color. As Margaret pointed out, the March wind is still relatively light. And I think we were looking at the metal fascia trim that goes around here, which really will be like an aluminum or more a silver metal. And we were trying to riff off that material and complement it with a paint color that made it feel like a cohesive campus. Certainly understand staff's point regarding that may be still too bright. And so just going to jump ahead to here. The paint is able to, it is a little bit flexible in terms of the Mercedes-Benz brand identity, and we could look to any of these four that we would show up here, we would probably pick that rock gray, which I think it's a little bit darker, but still is very complementary to this color scheme as a whole. So we're suggesting revising the paint color on the service building to something a little bit more darker, probably that rock gray is what we would come back with. And then finally, we wanted to talk just briefly about the materiality and how we've got some precedents that show the black metal panel and its use with masonry materiality, and how it can be complementary in a way that is quite striking, and like I said, did help us resolve some of those details at the base. So we were grateful for that suggestion, and it turned out to be a good one. Overall, we think it's an appropriate design for the entrance corridor guidelines. We are happy to continue to refine the design based on staff's comments, particularly around the site elements as well as the paint color. The final site staff recommendation for revision was the glass note, which we are happy to accommodate that glass note as well. We have a glass spec that we use on these entrance corridors that will meet all of the entrance corridor requirements. So we're happy to provide that as well. I think in conclusion, this image here shows just how far away that service building is, but we do understand staff's comment regarding let's just continue to downplay that. And so we feel that rock gray might be in a more appropriate choice. But otherwise, we're really excited to see the Flow project come to fruition. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thanks a lot. I guess we'll start with Dave if you have any questions.
No questions. Thanks for your presentation. I appreciate the further evolution of the design.
So Frank,
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Tara?
I guess my only question, have you looked at other bricks other than, like, do you have sort of backup options in mind for like a darker base brick? Not to say that this isn't a fine choice. I'm curious if you have other products you've been looking at as well.
We have, yeah. We've been working with Deb Brown at Cheney at what used to be Allied, and she had a number of, we often consider locally sourced brick just because freight becomes a real consideration, lead times, things like that. So there were two other options that were available. And we were also considering like a utility brick that then would get cut in half to get sort of that long, thin profile. Ultimately, we felt like this was the best option because it was an ease of installation, sort of a simple installation that met our requirements in terms of getting close enough to grade that it wouldn't be an issue from a manufacturer's perspective. It could be sourced easily, and it was cost competitive when we compared the brick. It's not our lowest cost solution, but it's also not one that's gonna be crazy high, much higher than brick.
Thank you.
All right, I don't have any questions. So I guess, are there any members of the public that want to make a comment?
Not at this time.
All right, in that case, the ARB will now go into discussion. I guess we'll start with Tara for any comments.
Sure. Thanks for the presentation. I really appreciate the development since the last time it's been brought forth. I think that all of the changes that have been proposed are positive, and I appreciate the applicant taking time to investigate and put those into the design. I think as far as downplaying the rear facade with a different color tone, I think that makes sense and is appropriate. I appreciate looking at the shade trees as well. And I don't think that this is something that I necessarily have like a condition attached to, but I think just it would be helpful probably for the applicant more than anything to, when looking at the color samples, I think I think like goths will talk about matching blacks. And I just wonder if the warm blacks and the cool blacks and the warm grays and the cool grays kind of coordinate, but that's just sort of a judgment to be made when the samples are actually there. So I appreciate the application, and I believe it meets a lot of the items that I had questions about. So thank you.
All right, thanks. Frank?
I agree with Taro. I think I appreciate staff and the applicant kind of working to correct specifically the landscaping, and going through the research to understand that. I do think the selected brick, I think, works well with the contemporary architecture. I think that's a nice selection. I appreciate that as a material kind of in this composition. The paint accent, again, I think very thoughtful, kind of the way the applicant analyzed that, and I'm okay with rock gray. I do think that light, maybe we're just blinded by the visualization, or not blinded, focused on the visualization, but do understand the implication of that, and so I think the rock gray would work well. Yeah, all in all, I think it's a nice application and very contextual as far as the other buildings that it is going to relate to in this corridor.
Thanks. Dave?
Yeah, I think Frank and Tara said it well. Appreciate the return of the shade trees to the landscape, the development of the masonry base to tie it more to our region's architecture, and the proposed darker color for the service building, I think will help make the whole development more cohesive. So thanks to the applicant and to staff.
All right, thanks. And yeah, at the risk of sounding like a bandwagon jumper on her, I really agree with what's been said and don't have anything meaningful to add to that. So if we could take a look at the recommended motion.
So the recommended motion is for approval with the conditions listed in the staff report. It sounds like there are no changes recommended to those items.
Right, does anybody have any tweaks or anything, or
No revisions.
somebody like to make a motion?
Happy to move for approval of the certificate of appropriateness for ARB 2025-24 Flow Mercedes with the conditions listed in the staff report without amendment.
I'll second.
All right, great. We could put that to a vote.
Mr. Stoner,
Recuse.
Recused. Oh, Frank recused.
oh,
That's fine.
Not voting.
Mr. Hancock,
Aye.
Mr. Matsuno,
Aye.
Mr. Henningsen,
Aye.
and Mr. Vanderwerf.
Aye.
All right, thanks a lot. So we will move into our one work session today, which is a review of draft action steps for the cultural resources chapter of the comprehensive plan.
So hopefully everyone's had a chance to look through these objectives and action steps. I don't have any formal presentation planned. I thought that maybe we would just go through these objective by objective and see if you had any comments, and I will just try and add those comments to the document as we go. Maybe we want to go out of order and start with number 5, which is the one that is most relevant to the entrance corridors, but I'm happy to start wherever you prefer.
Thank you. That sounds good to me, Margaret. For context, can you remind us where these points fit into the overall and how they relate?
So it does feel like a little bit backwards because you haven't read the chapter yet that all of this follows. You will be able to see that at some point in the near future. But the way this work went, there was some text for each of the chapters provided months ago that you all looked at. And then we looked at goals and objectives. And so now we're sort of at the next step where we've got the more detailed action steps. And then I'm hoping and maybe in the next month or so, we'll have that chapter for you to look at and you'll be able to see better how it all fits together.
Thank you.
Are there other boards or groups that are reviewing these same pages?
The Historic Preservation Committee has looked at these action steps and commented on them as well. And their comments have been incorporated into this draft.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
I guess I could add also, if I don't know if anybody has made any detailed comments, if you want to do that and if they're written, I'm happy to take those comments from you as well.
I guess, Margaret, it's looser than a comment, I guess, but in reviewing this, my question was really on how it seemed like the ARB's portion was mostly section 5, which I'm happy to talk about, but that I was a little unsure of how to evaluate 1 through 4 and how things like historic property designations or historic protections overlapped or didn't, if there was any issue coordinating things that this board was thinking about with what folks who are more concerned directly with the historic resources were considering. Like I can't remember any recent examples where historic protections became a significant part of applications before this board, but it was just something that came to mind as I was looking through these. Like,
I think one of the issues that we're trying to address in these objectives and the actions, and I think some of this came up with the guidelines update work that we've been doing, and some of the work that we went through with the arterials. I think what we've found that there is a lot of overlap in some of these with some of these resources. There's some of the entrance corridors over or travel through like National Register historic districts. There used to be scenic highway designation, which went away when the entrance corridors came into place. You all have talked about how a lot of several of the entrance corridors really have the scenic character is potentially more important than some of the buildings in those areas, just based on how those like the frontages and all the wooded areas. So I tried to address some of those issues with some of these action steps and looking at how those things overlay and how some of the regulations that are in place are, are they the right ones, or based on how those how some areas have multiple resources sort of laying on top of each other. Maybe it's something else that we should be looking at. So those are some of the things I was trying to get at here. I don't know that exactly answers your question. But with the historic and the cultural and the scenic resources, there really is a whole lot of overlap. And so I was trying to get at how how to really, look at what we have, prioritize, protection, that's wanted, and see how to, if what regulations would be best and what incentive programs might be, possible to put in place as well.
That's helpful. Thanks.
Margaret, what's the schedule for adoption?
Of the overall comp plan,
Yep.
I believe it's by the end of the year.
End of the fiscal year or end of the calendar year?
I think the calendar year.
And how does our quarter specific review fit into that or not fit into that? Like, is there a good chance we would have that finished before adoption?
That is a good question. I think as you've seen, that it is still listed as as an action, in here. I think that the work on that is, at the moment, is depending on, staff time, that's available, and is currently focused on form-based code updates. So, I think it's more of a question of how that project gets done, and then how the, staff time is distributed.
Should we go down this list or?
Yeah, whatever y'all think is best. I'm happy to take any comments.
Let's go.
Are there any specific ideas for streamlining review? That and would come, I guess, before the board, or I don't know whether we would rule on that and then board approves it or how that works, but
There are no specific, ideas at the moment. The way that would work is either you all would have ideas for, ways to do that, or staff would come up with that, and then we would bring it to you, and then it would move back up to the board for approval. It would be an additional, it could be an additional, category of countywide certificate. I don't know if there are other methods for doing that at the moment, but I think that just adding to the countywide certificates is what comes to mind. I think it would be, if you all think that types of projects are coming to you that are just very simple to review or always get approved, and we can come up with standard, design criteria for that. That's the sort of thing that we could do easily.
And is there anything on the order of like large scale project review? Like I think what we'd gone through around Barnes Lumber, is that something that would be considered under item H? Like if there's a way to formalize that for larger development projects or coordinated development projects or something like that?
Possibly. So that's the, yeah, we can consider anything. So, if you've got ideas, certainly, let us know.
Margaret, one of the things this reminds me of is the cell tower stuff. I haven't been following on where that is. Do you have an update on any of that? What Bill Fritz presented? It's probably been a year. It was a while ago.
Yeah.
It was, yeah.
I am not prepared to give an update on that. We could do that next time we meet. And we do still have that category of countywide certificate that we have not established the design criteria for. So that is something that that we could focus on coming up.
Was anything adopted? Like, wasn't that an ordinance that was gonna go to the board.
I think the ordinance was adopted.
It was adopted.
Yeah,
Okay.
And,
And then our work was coming up with the countywide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, it's just been a while since I've thought about that, but we can, try and get.
I don't
that
want
next
to
time.
create any extra work for anybody. I was just curious and thinking about, because a lot of the, we don't see much development in the rural areas where a lot of this stuff pertains to, and then you have the underlying zoning or other that would handle this. So, but it did make me think of the cell tower.
Right, yeah, and we haven't had a cell tower application in quite a while. But it would be good to have those criteria in place, before the next one comes up.
Okay.
And I guess a question, Margaret, like with item 5A, I guess when the comp plan adopts as a goal, I guess, establishing programs and policies, is there space in here or a need in here to enumerate the priorities, like maybe to Frank's point about in terms of what key issues the board would be most interested in addressing through policy related to corridors? Or maybe that's a second thing that follows from it, or
So if there are key issues that you would like to see itemized relating to programs or policies, just with the format of the document that we're doing, it probably wouldn't go into 5A.
Okay.
But I would have an opportunity to add it into the sort of the chapter text that comes before this,
I
so
see.
that there's
Okay.
it's a little, that discussion would be within the text of the chapter. And then this, so it's sort of
okay.
not as much detail in the
Mhm.
action step itself. So if there are some of those key issues that you want to identify today, I'm happy to take them.
So item C, for example, any immediate ideas about what that would include or what roadways would be added?
So I don't have a specific list at this point in time. That this is that idea that, we had a scenic highway designation before the entrance corridor overlay was put in place. And this would be looking at the concept of maybe some of those rural entrance corridors are better suited as scenic overlay rather than or scenic in addition to the architectural focus. I think what we're looking to do, so like in 5J, and there might be another one further along, the overlay study. I think that's something that that really needs to be done so we can really see how all these different resources are
Correct.
are sort of working together or not.
Mhm.
And I think that study is needed before we can figure out, which roads might be scenic corridors or which might be, a historic overlay or which might need to have an entrance corridor overlay added or just without doing that study, it's hard to know what's best at this point.
Barracks Road,
Right, but I
would
think
that be an example?
I can't hear you. Sorry.
Like Barracks Road, would that be an example? Maybe just a scenic corridor that's not already established.
Possibly. Mhm.
and I think there's some thought that also the scenic highway or scenic designation might then be an overlay of some other requirements that don't exist yet in the entrance corridor requirements. I think this came up maybe when we were looking at 250 West and East, and currently the rural area zoning permits R1 development as of right. There are a number of things that are permitted as of right that don't come with any overlay that allows for the scenic character of the or a requirement to preserve or maintain, continue some of the scenic elements of the corridor character.
Yeah, the scenic overlay, the regulations there were primarily, I think, increased setback, and there were sign regulations as well.
Can I ask, like sometimes when I'm driving around, I'll see other road designations that sound kind of like scenic route. Like, are there other bodies that are also designating scenic routes, even though we don't have an ordinance?
Yes, and you'll see this in the text of the chapter or in the existing comp plan, the 2015 comp plan. There are state scenic byways and scenic highways, and it actually gets very confusing, but there are like 3 different designations. When you do see the chapter text, you'll see it's all outlined what they are and what there are a couple that are potential byways or scenic highways, and so all that will be listed in the chapter text.
But to my knowledge, those don't have any land use implications. They're just sort of like
It's
naming
like
it,
like an
just letting
honorary
everyone know that,
designation.
yeah,
Mhm.
okay. And so would the intention be that this would maybe coordinate with that as well?
This is getting at something that would have regulations associated with it,
Yeah.
not just honorary.
Well, I'm not opposed to evaluating or considering a scenic designation for routes that would be separate from the entrance corridor guidelines.
Margaret, would there be specific criteria for a cultural resource? We have to make that up.
How do you mean?
Just thinking, for example, say, there's some rural historic gas stations that could be deemed cultural resources if the criteria was appropriate for that, and yet it may be an eyesore. How do we, how do you sort that out?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the cultural resources include a whole, just a whole lot of stuff. It's a very broad category.
Right.
If the county was to consider like a historic overlay, a local historic district, then those things that would be considered or would be available to be considered to be part of that overlay, it would have to be defined in that regulation, and that's a lot of detailed work that would need to be done if the county decides to move in that direction.
It's good. Yeah, I don't have any edits.
Yeah. Thank you.
All generally acceptable. Anything big missing from that? Any?
For one, I feel like it would have to be a lot finer grained for me to have like specific objections to things. Like, I think, maybe it's just how my mind works, but like all these, goals, I kind of agreed with all of them, realizing that like they may result in specific policies or regulations or whatever that I might disagree with some of the ways that it's implemented, but just
Okay.
in terms of like general direction or areas of concern, it all seemed appropriate, and I for one didn't feel like it was leaving anything out.
Okay, great. Thank you. We want to go back to the top, or maybe number 6 is actually related to some of the work this board does. Maybe go to number 6 next. That's reduce light pollution to protect and enhance the dark sky while balancing the need for a safe environment. 6A is about updating the lighting ordinance, and B, lead the protection of dark skies by designing and implementing lighting for county facilities that are energy efficient and dark sky friendly. Should say that the other chapters of the comp plan also address lighting in the dark sky. So this there aren't as many actions here because they're covered in other chapters.
It's good to me.
Yes.
Okay. General agreement there. Go back up to the top. So objective 1, develop and maintain an accurate and comprehensive inventory of the historic, cultural, scenic, and rural resources that contribute to Albemarle's unique sense of place. So starting at the beginning, what these objectives do is they talk about number 1, okay, like get the inventory in place and up to date. So you understand what you've got. You need to understand what you've got. Then you can move into educating about those resources, and then you can move into protecting them. So number 1 is about the inventory of resources.
I forget which letter it was in 5, but is there any chance that it makes sense up here in 1, whether it was H or something, that, or in terms of the overlay that it could go in either place, whether item J.
Oh, Jay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let me take a note and we'll look at that. Or coordinate them.
Just curious, Margaret, what is in place now if there is a historic building, say, I guess it's on the National Register or a Virginia landmark, and it's privately owned, and the owner wants to demolish it? What is like, is there anything restricting that?
No, the county has no regulations for historic resources. There are, well, let's say there's no historic overlay. There might be some resources out there that have some protection through conservation easements, or there could be conditions of a special use permit or a rezoning. But I don't think those numbers are very high.
And I know the county likes to document buildings that are slated for demolition. Is
Yes.
that a requirement, or is that a?
It's not a requirement, not at this time. The Historic Preservation Committee would like to see that be made a requirement, and I think we've got some action steps in here to address that.
Thank you.
Are the objectives intended to be in any kind of priority order, or they're all of equal
No.
priority? Okay, thank you.
Priority only in terms of got to know what you've got before you can protect it.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, I think these all look good to me.
Can I ask one additional question?
Sure.
So, I can understand, like, if a historic district or was established, they would have like a number of contributing structures and they write up a whole thing. That would govern what happens to those structures. If we had a scenic overlay, it could help us address situations where not currently captured by the entrance corridor design guidelines, but it would be something along the lines of like our rural areas where a lot of development is not permitted, but it could help establish regulations that would protect sort of the landscape, the scenic character of that route. I guess I'm struggling a little bit with the way that our board would work with the historic preservation folks. Because it seems to me like the scenic route is kind of, I don't know, it's in between, or I don't know exactly how. I would just worry about us setting our own guidelines without some sort of, or vice versa, right?
Right.
The historic folks setting their own district that's not properly in.
Sure. No,
It
I think
makes things
I get what you're
confusing.
saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we would have to coordinate it all. And so I think that's why this sort of that layer study is important. That would help prioritize or give you information to help prioritize which resources, are more important, or what is the focus in any particular area. And so, we would need to work through all those details, but definitely the, historic and architectural would have to be coordinated. And, I mean, ultimately it could end up being more streamlined. I think one of the issues with like some of the older National Register historic districts, they were really focused on buildings. And in more recent years, the historic districts have recognized more of the setting that the buildings are in, the building, what they're set in. And so figuring out how to maintain that character of the buildings in the setting is what's important. And I think that's one of the main things we'd have to try to figure out how to do and how to coordinate.
Yeah. And I can imagine a situation where like, I mean, we would be concerned with something that is attractive and consistent, but might not be historically accurate. Whereas that our missions are slightly different. So just making sure that we're in establishing districts or scenic overlays or whatever, that, we kind of have a shared set of goals and standards for applicants would be something I'd be interested in making sure everybody's clear on.
Sure.
Because it's the first time I'm kind of really thinking about the role that their committee or historic controls would have on our work. And it's, oh yeah, there's a lot of other considerations. So.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, it's a good point. If there's some recommended wording that you'd like to get in here in the actions or into the chapter to address that, be happy to take that recommendation.
Yeah, I don't really. I mean, especially, it's just that I think we're both in the same section, and it's making me think about it, but I don't object to any particular language in here.
Okay, but I appreciate the comment, and I think it's important that coordination is definitely necessary.
All right. Any other comments or questions or anything?
No, thank you, Margaret.
Yeah, thanks.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. if there is nothing else, then I will just forward these comments on to the comp plan team and I'll go through them and see if there's any tweaks that can recommend to get your comments into the plan.
All right,
Thank you.
thanks a lot. Right, so we will move on to other business. First would be approval of the March 3rd, 2025 minutes. Does anyone feel like making a motion?
So moved.
Second,
All right, great. We could put that to a vote.
Mr. Stoner,
Aye.
Mr. Hancock,
Aye.
Mr. Matsuno,
aye.
Mr. Henningsen,
Aye.
and Mr. Vanderwerf.
Aye.
All right, thanks. Do any board members or staff have any other items they'd like to bring forward?
No.
All right.
No.
Oh, okay. So we do not have any items currently for the April 17th, 2025 meeting. So the next ARB meeting is scheduled for Monday, May 5th, 2025. Do any board members at this point know that they're not going to be able to attend May 5th?
May 5th. I'll be able to attend.
We plan to attend.
Yeah, me too. So and I guess we'll confirm by email closer to May 5th. In that case, this meeting is adjourned until our next meeting on Monday, May 5th, 2025. It's 1:55 by my watch. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.